He was talking about, obviously, there needs to be a change in the club. But he wasn't just talking about changing personnel. He was talking about changing culture as well. And I think, obviously, managers have to be careful what they say, aren't they? Unless you're Troy Deeney, he can just destroy players. That's what he does in post-match conferences. But most managers are very protective of their players and very careful what they say. But I think he sort of, have a listen to it in your own time. But he sort of alluded to the fact that I think that he was saying, reading between the lines, that some of the players weren't able to do both parts of the game. So welcome back to Small Earth Alliance FC. We know that Gary Rowett was appointed as interim manager of Birmingham City for the last 8 games of the season. And in this video, we just want to do a quick review, now that the season's over, of what we think about Gary and what he did for Birmingham City in those 8 games, even though ultimately it did lead to us, unfortunately, not being able to maintain our championship status. So, Matt, obviously Gary Rowett, he came in at quite a difficult period after Mark Venus. So what's your overall thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think if you take Rowett's form in isolation outside the context of the rest of the season with the players that we had and the circumstances that we had, I actually think he did okay. And, we all know Tony Mowbray unfortunately had to take sick leave, and we all wish Tony and his family the best, which led Mark Venus to take charge. And we all know no one... everyone felt sorry for Mark Venus. He was basically covering for a friend in that scenario. He looked very uncomfortable on the sidelines. And me and you put our hands up, Dad, and we openly said we didn't want actually an interim manager. But at the time, actually, it was becoming pretty evident that Mark Venus was very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I think he was a little bit out of his depth. And that isn't a blame or a fault of Mark Venus. So obviously the club felt like they needed to act. They got Gary Rowett in, a safe pair of hands. And I think he did exactly what most Blues fans would expect. He stabled the ship at the back. He made us sit a little bit deeper. We were never the most exciting team going forward. And I think possibly you could argue that cost us a little bit there in the Rotherham and the Huddersfield game. A lack of sort of killer instinct in the final games there. However, in isolation, I don't think he did a bad job. It was just too little too late.
Yeah, so he had 8 games in charge, as you know, and we know that before he came in, we were leaking quite a lot of goals, particularly under Mark Venus. And we knew that when Gary Rowett came in, that we knew we've had him as a manager before, and we've seen what he's done at Millwall. He is a manager that will tighten you up at the back, as you've already mentioned, man. But let me just give you an overview of his performance, because he had 8 games in charge of Birmingham City, won 3 of those. Drew 2 and lost 3. So, you say, okay, that's a fair return on points given where we were before. So that's a positive thing. But what's interesting is that our defence. So in the last 5 games, we conceded 2 goals. 1 against Cardiff, that awful performance at home to Cardiff, and 1 against Huddersfield. But we had clean sheets in actually 4 of his games. We had a clean sheet against Preston, clean sheet against Coventry, clean sheet against Rotherham, and a clean sheet against Norwich. And we were struggling, weren't we, Matt? Do you remember we had previous videos where we were talking after post matches about how we can't keep a clean sheet? Clearly, he's addressed that.
If you take Rotherham out of the equation, you've just mentioned 3 teams in the top half of the table.
Yeah,
very dangerous teams, very clinical teams. Norwich and Coventry have a lot of quality going forward. So to keep clean sheets against teams like that's very impressive.
Yeah. I mean, his first game in charge was away at Queen's Park Rangers, and again we did all right, but we again another late goal. Remember we talked about late goals as well, and obviously that was Gary's first game back, and I think it was Jimmy Dunn who scored that. Actually a really good goal, to be honest, from QPR.
It was a gift, but it was a
gift. But again, we lost the game because of not our ability not to hold on to a draw in that particular example. Then we had the Preston game, which was the day of the UB40 concert. We won that
standstill goal.
Yeah, and then we went to Leicester and lost 2-1, and that was we knew that would be a tough fixture as well. And then for me, the worst game under Gary Rowett, I don't know if you agree with this, was Cardiff at home.
Yeah,
that was not a great game. We lost that 1-0, and then Coventry was a complete turnaround, won it 3-0, and then the 2 disappointing away draws at Rotherham and Huddersfield. I think they're the ones that will probably stick in our minds as the biggest reason why we maybe fell short in the end.
Over the 8 games that he's managed us, the 2 games which come to mind is Rotherham and Huddersfield, 23rd and 24th. Even before we played them, they were sitting in 23rd and 24th, and we couldn't finish them off.
Yeah.
That screams Gary Rowett, doesn't it? Because he's such a defensive-minded manager. Fair enough, you can stop the goals going in all you like, but then if you can't score goals, it's just as bad or just as an equal of a problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Rowett gives you that. He gives you the stability at the back, but he does give you a lack of options moving forward. And why again, I'm not going to dwell on this. We've moved past it. We're in League One next year.
Oliver Burke.
Oh, why did he play Oliver Burke in the Rotherham game? And I know he's going to argue physicality, but that was the completely wrong choice, in my opinion. That killed any hope we had going forward in the Rotherham game, in my opinion. However, as I say, I have no hard feelings toward Gary Rowett. He almost came in a borderline impossible scenario. And talk to us a little bit, because I've not watched it yet, Dad, but you mentioned to me about Gary Rowett's post-match video against Norwich. He mentioned something about the culture. Talk to us a little bit about what he said in that video.
He was I can't remember the gist of it, but he was talking about, obviously he was disappointed because that was just after we'd beaten Norwich, but unfortunately confirmed as relegated because the other results went against us. But he was talking about, obviously there needs to be a change in the club. But he wasn't just talking about changing personnel; he was talking about a change in culture as well. And I think obviously managers have to be careful what they say, aren't they? Unless you're Troy Deeney, he can just destroy players. That's what he does in post-match conferences. But most managers are very protective of their players and very careful what they say. But I think he sort of, have a listen to it in your own time. But he sort of alluded to the fact that I think that he was saying, reading between the lines, that some of the players weren't able to do both parts of the game. They weren't able to be attacking and defensive at the same time. So I think he was really maybe talking about the frustrations of the squad, that he didn't have the players that he could potentially call upon to do what he wanted them to do.
Yeah.
And I like the honesty of managers, and I do like Gary Rowett, and I like the fact that you always felt that he was in charge. You had confidence when he spoke. A lot of Blues fans may not agree with his tactics, but we knew that when he came in, he had to address the fact that we were leaking goals, and we knew that would happen.
Not only did he inherit a poor squad in terms of quality, because we've seen it on the pitch now for 46 games, he inherited a club in borderline chaotic in circumstances, didn't he? If you think about the course of the season, with all the decisions that got made, an already chaotic team, a squad who have been already used to having previous managers. So not only was he inheriting 8 final difficult games in difficult circumstances, he was getting involved in a club that was borderline imploding.
So if I was to ask you then, now that the season's finished, about the job that he's done while he was there, clearly he didn't achieve the ultimate objective of staying up, but what's your thoughts on Gary Rowett?
I don't think that's on Gary Rowett. I think, he's the manager, so some people would argue that the book ultimately stops with him. But the thing with Blues, which I noticed towards the end of the season, Plymouth were beating Leicester. Sheffield Wednesday were winning big games. People were scoring in the last minute of games. People were grafting and grinding, finding those results. Our players just didn't have that in them. We were losing games in the 90-plus minutes. We weren't holding on for long enough. There was a mentality gap missing within our players and our squad. And I'm sure Gary Rowett tried to plug that and fill that. I'm sure other managers attempted to do that as well, but there was something missing in that group of players for me. So I think Rowett has came in and done an average to an above average job, considering the circumstances he's had to inherit. In fact, actually, no, let's give him credit. I think he's done a good job.
I think so as well, man. Obviously, ultimately people might say, well, you didn't keep us up. But like you said, that wasn't his fault in terms of he'd got like 8 games to go, and the damage had pretty much been done by that stage with a very small window to try and turn the ship around. I got to give him credit. I look at what you're thinking. Why did you take on that job? But I think he felt like he had unfinished business at Blues. He was a very well-respected manager in his first term at Birmingham City, and fair play to him. He's came in, he's took on a difficult situation, and he has tried his best with the ammunition that was given to him, which is the players. And I think that, we fell short for a lot of different reasons, but I don't think that he could have really done too much more. Yeah, you could argue, like you talked about, the Oliver Burke decision and maybe tactically here and there, but I'm sure that if you ask Gary Rowett, and, he'd honestly, openly admit, I wish I'd done this differently, or I wish I'd done that. But overall, for me,
to be honest with you, Dad, we can pick the Oliver Burke decision against Robin. There's still 10 other players on that pitch that didn't step up in that game. So it's not fair to scapegoat Gary Rowett and to scapegoat Ali Burke. I know I'm being a hypocrite because I mentioned that earlier in the video. What I was trying to get at is some of the decision making, it could have been stronger, but that isn't ultimately the reason why those games were lost. Because, if there's 90 minutes in that game, there's 10 other players on the pitch. If we really wanted to batter Rotherham, we'd have battered Rotherham if we had the quality to do so, and Huddersfield. We haven't got the quality. We didn't have the desire or the passion in the players that game, all those different elements to it. But I think he's done a good job. At the time of recording, Tony Mowbray is still our manager. He's on sick leave, and we do hope that Tony Mowbray is recovering well with his family and he does return to our club.
Of course, yes.
But let's just do a hypothetical, and let's just say Tony Mowbray decided to retire, or he did. What would you say to Gary Rowett being the Birmingham City manager next season? Just in a hypothetical scenario of if there was a vacancy there.
Okay, so I think if you look at the vision of the club and the type and style of football they want to play, ask the question now they're in League One, will Gary Rowett get us out of League One? That's the first question, and that's what the owners will look at. In my opinion, I do like Gary Rowett. I do like him. I think he's a good football manager. But if I'm honest, in my opinion, this is my opinion, I don't think he's the right person to bring us out of League One, in my opinion.
I agree.
So I would I'd thank him, and I do thank him. I think he's he always comes across really well in his post-match interviews and when you hear him speaking. But if we're looking at the vision of the club and where we need to be and where we want to go, I personally don't think he's the right person to take us where we need to be. But thank him very much for what he's done for us so far.
Shake his hand, go for a beer with him. Get him on the podcast if he would come on. All those things have
Well, after we've just got rid of him, I don't think he's going to come on the podcast.
No. But the point is, no hard feelings towards Gary Rowett. I respect him and I like him, and I think he's done good under the circumstances the impossible circumstances, really, in which he's came into. I agree with your sentiment. I don't think he's the man to take us forward, only because he's too similarly aligned with Eustace, and we got rid of Eustace for a very specific reason about his sort of sitting back, giving other teams more possession. Rowett's very similar, and if this club wants to get bigger, this club wants to move on to better things, we have to move away from that style of football. We have to be more front-footed. We have to be the Leicester of League One. We have to go in there and have 70% possession in games and really start to dominate, and I don't think Gary Rowett's going to give you that style of football. However, I like him. I thank him, actually. Even though we relegated, I still thank him for coming in and giving his best. It wasn't his fault.
Full respect, yeah.
And I wish you all the best for the future, Gary, whatever job you do land. If it is Blues and they decide to give him up, I will 100% get behind him and back him.
So will I.
But I'm just going to make the point that I agree with you, Dad. I don't think he's the man to take us forward.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Any manager that comes in, we will back. We even backed Rooney when the fans did try. We did try, so we'll always back our managers. But I just think the way that this club is now moving forward, we have reached this sort of cut-off point, I think, now where we have to now start to step forward and move forward. And I think that'll be a change in the style of play, a change in tactics. But Tony Mowbray's our manager.
Yes.
That's the bottom line.
Just a hypothetical game.
He is our manager. But obviously, this video is about Gary Rowett, so I think it was fair to ask that question. Even though we know, let's make it clear, we know and we're happy that Tony Mowbray is our manager, and we're hoping and praying that he can come back to us at the start of before pre-season and take our club forward.
I actually think Mowbray's the perfect man to get us out of League One. Yeah. I really do. I think
he's done it before, hasn't he?
He's experienced at that level. He got Blackburn out of League One. He plays that progressive front-footed style of football. I think if we're going to get a League One in one jump, in one season, we stand the best chance with someone like Tony Mowbray.
Yeah, me too. So that's what we think about Gary Rowett. And once again, we do thank Gary for stepping in to take over these last 8 games. And even though we didn't achieve what we wanted to, the efforts that you've put in with our club, with our players, is really, really appreciated. And you'll always be welcome at Birmingham City, Gary. So again, thank you very much. But we'd love to know what your thoughts are of Birmingham City supporters. What do you think about Gary Rowett's tenure in the 8 games that he was with us? Do you think he was successful? Obviously, me and myself and Matt have given our opinions on what we think about him. But what do you think? Leave a comment below and let us know your thoughts on Gary Rowett. If you did like this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up. And if you have not checked out our social media channels, make sure you do so. You'll see the handles appearing on the screen right now for our Instagram account and for our X account. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any further videos all about Birmingham City. And myself and Matt will see you on the next video.